Welcome, and thanks for joining us online. This week, we jump into our new series called Heart Attack. It's the second of our series that we work to uncover the truths that Jesus shared with his Sermon on the Mount. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, over the last several months, first of all, we're really glad you're here. And if you haven't been with us over the last several months, we've been looking at some different, real life circumstances that everybody, no matter where you live on the planet, eventually, at some point in your life, you're going to have to deal with it. Either because you make choices, good or bad, or maybe other people make choices and you don't get a vote on it. It just kind of lands on you. And now you just have to face this thing in front of you. Real life situations, and what we're talking about today certainly will qualify as that. But the purpose of why Jesus is doing this in this talk he's given on the side of this hill is Jesus is saying we're all going to have to face this stuff in our life, and there's two different ways to go about it. Around Flatirons we say there's always two deals on the table, and you get to pick which deal you go with. And so what he's saying is we go into it, but we're all looking for the same thing. It's like, if I do this way, or I do it that way, hopefully on the other end, I'll be good. I'll be a good man, I'll be a good woman, I'll be a good person, I'll have a good life, whatever that is. And the important thing to remember here is that in all of Jesus' teaching, and let me just take a time out, what we're going to look at today, and this is my opinion, probably more than any other part of the whole Bible, this is probably what I would say the most mistaught, misapplied, weaponized part of Scripture that I've ever experienced. Now, that's just my opinion on that. But the thing to remember on this is, in this whole Sermon on the Mount that Jesus is giving, that we're going to spend a whole year in, he's not handing out more rules or laws for you to follow so that if you do it right or do it wrong, maybe God will say you're good. Or maybe you'll be able to look in the mirror and go, I think I'm a good person based on if I did it right or wrong. So what Jesus is doing, and again, we don't ever think of Jesus like this, but Jesus has been watching what's going on in religious world, and basically, right in the middle of this talk, he says, I'm calling BS on something. I don't know if he called it that back then, but go with it. All right, I'm calling BS on the way people are misusing and abusing and then misapplying God's word and throwing it at people and hurting it at people. And here's what he's going to do. He's going to say, all right, there's two ways to approach this. He's going to say, all right, this way, this is what religion says about it. And I guess you can try to be good by doing it, by being religious, all right? But then he's going to follow it with, but I tell you that if that's the way you're going to approach this, you're going to miss the heart of God. You're going to miss the intent of every law that God has ever given. If all you concentrate on the law and not think about the God who's behind that law, you're going to miss everything. Because here's kind of my big aha moment over the last year or two. Every law, the 10 Commandments and any other law you find in the Bible, every law from God always served one and usually two purposes. If you really analyze them, why would God give you laws? Well, every law serves one of these purposes. First of all, and think about this. If he gives you a law or a rule, it's to provide for you the best environment, like your best shot. As long as this is here, you have a shot at what? For you to flourish and experience a good kind of life. And the Greek word we've been looking at is the dikaiosune. It's righteous. God's heart is dikaiosune. It's good. And he says, I want you to have that. God says, I want to give you my goodness so you experience this good life in my kingdom. So any rule I would give you, and just go through the 10 Commandments, he's trying to provide for you the best life that you can actually experience a good life in. Does that make sense? And the other thing is that to protect you from anything or anybody who would try to take away from you the good life that God meant for you to have and experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't give you the rule. I want to provide a good shot for you, and I want to protect you from anybody or anything that tries to take that away from you, because I love you. Now, listen, religion, it doesn't care about that. And again, some of us were raised in this kind of religious atmosphere. It's only concerned with, they didn't care about our hearts or our relationships with God or anybody else. It's only about, did you do it right? On the right day, in the right way, in the right amount of times, or whatever that is, all right? Did you do it right or wrong? And Jesus comes along and says, listen, you might want to rethink how you think about everything. Because God is much more, and we've hit this every week so far. Ben hit it last week. God is much more concerned about the person that you are and who you are becoming more than what you're doing right or wrong. Because what you do, right or wrong, is just an overflow of who you are. So let's work on who you are. Does that make sense? The kind of person you are. So Jesus is always going to say, hey, listen, we can look at rules and regulations and behaviors, but let's look at your heart. Right? For example, this is what we've covered so far over the last month in here. So if you want to go by religious law, the law just boils it down to, you want to be a good person? Don't murder one another. That's a high bar, right? So if you want to be a good person, just don't murder anybody. Jesus would say, okay, I guess that's good, but how about this? Let's look at why you're so angry all the time. And how that anger is coming out of you, and is it coming out the right way? It's not wrong to be angry, but your anger is coming out in ways that just murder everybody. Let's look at your heart. The law says, hey, just stop calling people bad names, at least out loud, all right? But Jesus says, okay, that would be better, but here's a better question. Why are you redefining the person that you're angry at or frustrated at as someone different than or less than what God says they are, who God says they are? Why do you want to call them that? What's going on in you that you want to call them that? So you can do something to them? Let's look at your heart. Then last week, Ben hit this. He says, the law just basically said, don't have sex with somebody that you're not currently married to. Which I preach this all the time. The world would just be a better place if that happened. Well, that's actually true, right? Jesus says, okay, but even if that's all you did, how about this? Let's look at this. Why are you mentally and relationally and sexually, you're looking for something good in all those relationships, you're looking in the wrong place. Let's look at that. Right? And that's what Ben talked about last week. So when we come to this part of this talk he gives, where Jesus is going to talk about, let's look at the current state of marriage and divorce going on in our world. The best way to figure out what's really going, crazy or wrong or whatever's going on, all right? It's not just to go, here's the rules about divorce. And as soon as you heard or read in your program, we're going to talk about marriage and divorce, here's what you're expecting. Jim's going to give the law. If you're a good Christian, this is what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. But that's not what we're going to do today. We're going to go back and say, what was God's heart when he gave us any law or rule about marriage or divorce? What was he trying to provide us or protect us from? And then look at that and then go, you know what? If that's true, then maybe from now on, I need to make a better choice, a better decision. I might need to see things different, because I think we'd all agree with this, even if it's your first time ever coming to church. If you look at the condition of marriages in America or around the world, and families blowing up, and just what we see with our parents or with our kids, whatever that is, you look around and go, this is not working. No, nobody's going to look around and go, yeah, the state of marriage in America couldn't be better. Nobody's going to say that. See, we all agree something needs to change, okay? So that's what I want to look at today, all right? Now, I'm going to put a bunch of disclaimers out here because this is a tough subject. You all think this is water. It's only 9 o'clock. It's mostly water. So, needs lime. Can we put lime there? So let me add a few disclaimers on here, okay? All right, before we jump into this. Because let's be honest, some of you came in here, wherever you're listening to this from, and you went, oh, and you kind of tightened up your sneakers because as soon as I say the wrong thing, you're going to bolt. Because here's what you're thinking. You're just waiting for me to throw stones at you, or Jesus to throw stones at you, or me to hand you more stones so you can just keep on stoning yourself. Or here's what some of you are doing, all right? You went and got an extra piece of program because you're going to take notes. Because you're going to go let somebody have it right after church. Because now you are loaded for bear about what they did wrong. You know what I'm talking about. Your ex, fill in the blank. Right? So we're not going to do that. First, I want to tell you this. This is not an attempt to do an exhaustive study of everything the Bible has to say about marriage and divorce and every Bible verse and every reference and every kind of marriage and every kind of divorce in the whole universe. It's just too much. So I'm not even going to try to do that, all right? But I did kind of realize this. I was writing this talk this week, and it just got longer and longer and longer, and I went, you know what? I'm going to cut it in half. So I'm going to do half this talk today, and it's still going to go 6 minutes long, right? But I'm going to do half this talk today, and then half of it next week, because this is so important. I just don't want to say, I'm going to cram it all in and then move on to another topic. So we're going to slow way down, and we're going to go really, the stakes are so high. The second thing is this is so important, is that back at Labor Day, I said that over the next year, we're going to spend all of our time working our way through the Sermon on the Mount. And I'm going to break my own rule here. This is how important what we're going to talk about this week and next week is so important. When we come back from Christmas break, because we always take the weekend off right after Christmas, but when we come back in January, we're going to push pause on the Sermon on the Mount, and we're going to go back, and I've been looking at this series I did about 5 or 6 years ago. It's one of my favorite series. I'd say it's one of the most impactful series that we've ever done here, called Reverse Engineering. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to rewrite that. And bring it back in here. And we're going to target the hearts of men again, because again, men, we don't have all the blame, but we have a lot of it. Ladies, can I get an amen or something? Don't, all right? We don't own all of it, because ladies, you have your crap too, but if men would just pull their heads out of the sand. There's some kids over here. I'm trying to keep it clean, all right? So many of the world's problems go away. But what I want to do is I want to rewrite it and look at what's going on with men and with women and all the relationships we find ourselves in. And the reverse engineering is there's a target down there, and I try to shoot my whatever at that target, and I keep missing it. And I get mad at the target. And the problem's not the target. The problem's me. And I need to do some stuff way up here. And that was a gun reference. That offends you. You don't know me well. All right, that's all I would say. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. I'm almost out of time, and I haven't even started. All right, today I want to lead with love. I've said this before. If you want to take notes, love, truth, and power in that order. And if you leave any of them out and go in the wrong order, it all falls apart. Love is the reason why Jesus even brings us up in the first place. Jesus really cares about us, and he sees that this part of our life has the potential to make our life so awesome and so horrible, right? If you have a good marriage, it's the closest thing to this side of heaven, all right? If you have a bad one, it's the closest thing to hell, this side of hell. It can be the best or the worst, and it's so important that if we get it right, it's great. And if we get it wrong, it destroys everything, all right? So he's going to say this. I want to show you the best way to provide and protect yourself and this person that you're connected to. I'm not going to pile on shame and blame. I have enough shame and blame and guilt. Did you need to come to church for more shame and guilt? So Jesus didn't come to give us shame and guilt. He came to deliver us from it. Got it? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start with love. The only reason Jesus brings this up is that he loves us. The next thing is I'm going to point to what Jesus says is true. All right? Jesus says it's true. This isn't what I think is true or my opinion on truth. This is not Flatirons' official stance on marriage and divorce. No, it's just truth. Jesus says, this, I promise, in my world, in the way I design people, this stands up the best. This leads to a better life. All right? Now, it's truth for you. Now, this is really, really important, everybody, okay? Before we even get into this, this is truth for you, not your wife. This is not truth for your husband. This is not truth for your parents. This is truth for you. Jesus just wants to talk to you. She's not your deal. And you're not her Holy Spirit. Got it? All right? So Jesus wants to talk to you about your heart. He wants to talk to you about your heart. So I'm just going to say this. If you can't handle this, if you're going to get in the car in a few minutes and look over at the other person and go, did you take notes? Because I took them for you here, right? And don't, hey, mom and dad, you guys are jacked up, according to pastor. Don't do that. And you say, well, I can't promise that. Then please leave now. Okay? Because we're not going to beat each other up with this. All right? This is what Jesus says is true for you. And the third word is power. And that's not power up. Power is like spiritual power. Power gets stuff done. You're going to have to get up out of this room in about 35 minutes or so, and you're going to have to go say, what am I going to do with this? And I'm not going to tell you what to do. Here's the only thing I'm going to tell you what to do. Would you think about it? That's the application. All right? Will you just think about the way you've been thinking about stuff, and then decide if you want to come back some more. But that is between you and God. And this is not about if you do it right, you're a good Christian, and if you do it wrong, you're a bad Christian. As a matter of fact, because I wrote this whole talk, I just cut it in half, I've already written the end. At the very end of this talk, Jesus says, listen, I'll be honest with you, not everybody's going to be able to accept what I'm about to teach you. And those who can should. And those who can't, well, you're still welcome. And then he does a mic drop and walks out of the field. And they're like, is there any more? No, think about it. That's it. All right? He does promise that with God's power in his kingdom, things that were impossible are now possible. Even if when you sit in here and hear what I'm saying today, you can go, it's not possible. I understand. Just think about it. all right? Jesus has been saying over and over, if what you have or what you've had in the past is working, hold on to it. But if it's not, just think about what Jesus has to offer you and then maybe rethink everything, including marriage and divorce, right? Is that fair? Okay, so I said this, is that Jesus is going to talk about really relevant stuff. So I did this last night, and I just want to see in all of our campuses if this is what we're talking about is a relevant topic. Here's what I mean by that. You don't have to do this, but last night they did, so they're better people than you if you don't. So I'm kidding. Again, this is voluntary. Don't do it till I count to 3, all right? If you have personally gone through a divorce, if your parents have gone through a divorce, or your kids have gone through a divorce, or you have a brother or sister that's gone through divorce, when I count to 3, let's raise our hands. 1, 2, 3, go. Now hold them up. Look around. You are not alone. Right? So will we agree this is relevant? So even if you're sitting there going, this is for other people, the week's not over yet. All right? It's a matter of time. So somebody that we care about, either ourselves or somebody we care about, is going to walk through this, and we want to walk through it with them in a really loving way. So I'm going to pick right up where Ben left off last week, talking about sex and masturbation. It was so awesome. That's all I remember. I'll just be honest with you. And some of you weren't here going, well, we're going to watch that now. And no, we're not. You're 13. Way to go, Ben. So we're going to pick right up here, okay? So this is Jesus talking, okay? Let's jump into this. It has been said, and that's Jesus' way of saying, so the religious way to be good, all right? It's been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. And so the religious world that Jesus walks into, the way that religion said that you could consider yourself a good man, a good person, is to keep the law, the Jewish law about divorce, which has nothing about the relationship between the two of you, your relationship with God, anything. It's just about, it was only concerned with behavior, which was if you want to divorce your wife, and then there's 2 schools of thoughts on this. One kind of school said you could divorce your wife, how about this, for any and every reason. Well, that's pretty much everything, right? So there was a school of thought that said, and you can get divorced if your wife burnt dinner, if she put too much salt on the food, if she wasn't pretty enough anymore, or if you just met somebody else. You didn't want to be married to her anymore, all right? So I was at the gym this morning, and this guy walks up to me at the gym, and he goes, hey, I'm Stephen. I'm one of those Jews that goes to your church. I'm like, well, that's a unique introduction. And his whole family, they did the kosher food, all growing up. And he said, you know what you were talking about divorcing for over seasoning food, stuff like that, that's still on the books. All right, so this is the world Jesus grew up in, okay? And so you go, all right, so you can get divorced for any reason whatsoever. The other school of thought was you could only get divorced if one of you, really her, all right, stepped outside of marriage to pursue a physical sexual relationship with another person. Now let me call out something really obvious, because the world has changed in some ways for the better. And here's what I mean by that. Like in terms of a woman's protection in the divorce proceedings. Now, take a breath. It's not perfect. All right, so save that email, all right? But it is better than in Jesus' day. A woman back then was just considered property, and she didn't have any say in her marriage or her life at all. So it is a little bit better now. So the world has changed, but the truth hasn't changed, which is this. So that was 2,000 years ago, and this is 2018. The truth that Jesus is calling out is this, and this applies to women too, because culture has changed, so everything that Jesus is saying to men, women can now do back to husbands, right? So in that day they couldn't, but now you can. Ladies, you can divorce your husband for any and every reason. You don't even have to have one, all right? So this goes both ways. So anytime I say husbands to wives, it also means wives to husbands. You just have to do the math, and you can do this. But here's the real thing that Jesus is trying to get to. What is going on in a person's heart, husband or wife, that would lead them to do what they're doing in the way they're doing it? Why are you doing that to her? Why are you treating him that way? Because here's the reality that a woman faced at the time when Jesus was teaching, all right? If a woman was found guilty of sexual immorality, of having an affair, the 2 options available to her husband were he could divorce her or have her executed. That's still in the Middle East today. just so you know, okay? That's not some ancient thing. That's still in some countries today, all right? He could either divorce her or have her executed. Now, listen to this. Remember in the Christmas story when Joseph finds out that Mary's pregnant and he knows that's not my baby? Both those options were on the table, and he decided in his mind he was going to put her away privately. He was going to divorce her, because even when you're engaged back then, it's the same as marriage, all right? So I'm going to put her, I don't want to have her executed. I'm going to give her a piece of paper, send her away. Because in Jesus' day, in order to divorce your wife, all you had to do is write a legal document and give it to her, a pink slip her, all right? And then send her away. It says, you're no longer married to me, and you're free and clear to move on with your life. But here were her options. Here's a woman's options that she was facing in a jacked up culture that God never meant for her to experience. So ladies, if you go back 2,000 years ago and your husband wanted to kick you to the curb for any reason, here are your options. Maybe a relative would take you in as a servant or to work in the field. It's better than starving to death, but just a little, right? So that's one option. Second thing is because you have that piece of paper, maybe another man would marry you, but you always be viewed as, in society back then, as damaged goods. There's some cultures here in America that if you're divorced, you still should wear this big letter on your chest or something like that. There's something wrong with you. But so any kind of man back then that would actually marry a woman like that would probably just use her as a slave, a field hand, or probably a sex slave. What's she gonna do? She has no rights. And so he would just use her. And so, but that's better than being single back then, because if you're single, you can't really have a job and you don't have kids, and who's going to take care of you when you get older, and who's going to protect you? And he's probably just going to sell you off to somebody else. So here's your third option. If you don't want those first two, you could always become a prostitute. At least you get paid. Really, those were the only options you had back then. And I think we would all agree, all three options are bad. Right? What do you mean? Execution, slavery, or prostitution? Well, that's all bad. But listen, here's the double standard back then, all right? So a man, legally or religiously, he was off the hook because he had done the good thing. And he told himself that he was a good person and he could move on. He also told himself that, I gave her a piece of paper, so technically she can move on with her life. But if he was really honest, he knew that what he was handing her was all bad. Now, let me just talk to the obvious thing here, right? So if you're sitting here right now, listen to me, going, well, that's not fair. It shouldn't be like that. Jesus agrees with you, which is why he calls it out in the middle of his talk, going, hey, I'd like to talk about just this jacked up culture that's happening in marriage and divorce that's ruining a lot of people's lives. Can we talk about that? As a matter of fact, Jesus is above any other religious leader I can find in history. He values and raises up and elevates the value and status of women more than any other religious leader I can find. Remember when that woman was thrown at Jesus' feet because they caught her doing something and they wanted to stone her to death and they had a law? Jesus goes, yeah, you're going to go through me. Jesus is the greatest protector of women that you'll ever find. All right? And so he's going, this has got to change. It's got to change. Just because you hand out a pink slip that says that makes you good, that's about equal to saying, I don't murder people, so that makes me good. It's not true. So here's Jesus' answer to all that. All right, so you've heard it said, I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital faithfulness or sexual immorality, unless she sleeps with another guy, right? Unless for that, you actually cause her to become an adulteress, and anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery. Now listen, let me rephrase that, because I've gotten emails about a month ago. I just recited the Sermon on the Mount out loud, and I got like 10 emails going, what's that mean? Are you saying that if I get divorced and I marry somebody else for the rest of my life, I'm living in adultery? No, all right? I'm going to say some stuff today that I have never heard in another church. I had to be the pastor of one to find one to let me say it. All right, so I get fired, but this is Flatirons. All right, so let me rephrase that. But I tell you, unless your wife has actually committed adultery, which would make her an adulteress, all right? But if she hasn't, listen, just because you have done the legal paperwork, you are still responsible for putting her into the same category, and you've given her the same future options and consequences as if she had committed adultery, even though she hadn't. In other words, you gave her a piece of paper and you feel good about yourself. You've ruined her life. But you can move on, right? So again, please hear this, okay? Jesus is not passing out rules that say, hey, followers, if you're really a good Christian, all right, if you're living your life in my kingdom, all right, then you are never, ever allowed to get divorced under any circumstances whatsoever unless somebody has an affair. Other than that, you're stuck. That's how I was raised. That's how I was raised, right? And here's what we're going to see in a minute, that sometimes, and hopefully this is going to be an aha-free moment for some of us, all right? Sometimes, even when you're running after Jesus, even when you're doing the best you can, even if you're trying to live your life with God in his kingdom, please hear this. Sometimes divorce, while never a good thing or a pain-free thing, this is the only thing you're going to take a picture of all weekend, all right? In some cases, divorce would be a better or necessary option than staying married. Sometimes, and your situation, that's between you and God, right? But what Jesus is calling out, but what's really going on in a person's heart that would cause him or her, right, for whatever reason to say, you know what, I don't want to be with him. I shouldn't have to be with him anymore. What makes you think that some legal piece of paper or some court document or whatever makes it okay or releases you from your responsibility of what's about to happen to the rest of your family, starting with your spouse? It's not good. It's not good. It's not what God wants for you. It's not what God wants for your spouse or your kids. Look at this. Jesus addresses the same thing, and I'll spend the rest of my time here. He's having the same conversation someplace else. Some Pharisees, these are these religious people, they came to Jesus to test him, so they're going to try to trap him, and they ask, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason, all right? And this is a yes or no question. Jesus is can I kick my wife out for any and every reason? But the real question, and the question that all of us are waiting for me to answer for you, is this: like, what's the rule? What's the rule about divorce that allows a person to still qualify to be a good person? I'm a Christian, so what's a rule so I can go ahead and get divorced but still call myself a Christian? Something like that. What must I do? What am I not allowed to do? And it's the wrong question, right? Here's how Jesus responds to, can I get a divorce? Well, haven't you read? Time out. They read. The people he's talking to memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. And he's going to quote from Genesis, all right? Well, haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning, the Creator, God, made them male and female and said, for this reason, time out. For what reason? The Creator made this all up. The Creator initiated this. The Creator defined it. The Creator has an idea, and this is what it looks like. He made them male and female, and then he said, for this reason, a man, therefore, will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. This is how a lot of us had kind of closed out our wedding ceremonies. Remember this? Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Therefore, because of all of that, what God has joined together, don't break up. So Jesus has asked this question. So when can a person get divorced? And Jesus answers the question with a question, and it has nothing to do with divorce. When can a person get divorced? I got another question. What's God's original definition and purpose of marriage? Go back to the beginning. So you ask about divorce? What's marriage? Now here's the thing, all right? Nobody was asking that question back then or today. Right? When things are going really, really hard, we go, when can I get divorced? No. Wrong question. What's marriage? See, the world hasn't changed. Everybody goes, well, that's a long time ago. Let me tell you how close it was back then, all right? So back then in Jesus' day, nobody listening to Jesus had any hope whatsoever or any expectation of getting married sometime in your 20s and being married to the same person for the rest of their life. It was ridiculous. In Jesus' day, people were getting married and divorced 13, 14 times. They had a lot of bad cooks burning dinner. I don't know what the problem was there, but that's not really funny. Listen, so much so, that when Jesus says that, his disciples, and I'm not talking about all those people sitting on the side of the hill listening to him for the first time, people who were close to him, who had followed him around for like a year at that point, they hear Jesus say, this is what marriage is, and they look back at Jesus and they go, Lord, that's not realistic in today's modern world, year 30. Right? The same thing we say, we just fill in 2018. That's not, They actually say this to him, Jesus, if that's what marriage is, forever. It'd be better just not get married. And Jesus doesn't argue with them. Yeah. Because here's Jesus' definition of marriage, all right? This is really important because I'm not preaching against anything. Save that email. I'm just pointing to what Jesus says, and you can do the math in your own head. Is that fair? All right? The definition of marriage, he doesn't go to culture. He doesn't even go to the Bible and go, but it's changed because the world has changed. No. He just said, I'm going to go back to the one who made the whole thing up, God. Here's what he says. Again, write this down if you're ever asked this question. According to God, the definition and purpose of marriage is one man, and what do you mean? So the Hebrew word is a masculine noun, image, all right? All right? Being joined to one woman. Well, can you get more specific about it? Yes, it's a feminine Hebrew noun. So one masculine being married to or joined to a feminine by God who is spirit into a permanent union. And union, the Hebrew word is akad. It means oneness. It means, so it's the same word we get integrity from. If all you math people, you have fractions and you have whole numbers, integers in integrity. We're one. One, okay? That's what he's saying. So here's what he's saying. So image is a masculine noun. Likeness is a feminine noun being joined by a spiritual bond. Three becoming one. You want to get mystical? Ready? Let's go even higher so you understand when Jesus is saying marriage, here's what he's thinking about. How about this? Marriage is an earthly portrayal of the spiritual Trinitarian community of mutual love, respect, intimacy, and submission to one another, modeled after the community of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Boom. That's what you got into. That's what you might get into, right? What do you mean? Your marriage was supposed to be an earthly portrayal of the Trinity coming together, loving one another, serving one another, mutually submitting to one another, laying down their rights like Jesus did. He laid down his position as God to go and serve me. I'd sign up for that marriage. Wouldn't you? Jesus, that's what marriage is. To which those loophole religious people, they didn't argue with him. They knew the Hebrew. They didn't disagree. So what they did is they did what all of our kids do. Sorry, kids, here's what we do all the time, right? Yeah? Well, what about that? And they threw a Bible verse at Jesus. Don't do that. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? So when they say Moses, they really mean God, because God told Moses, hey, go tell the people this, all right? So why does God command that when a man divorces his wife, he gives her a certificate to send her away? They have a Bible verse. Christians, we are so good at finding this obscure little Bible verse that we don't use any other time unless we want to throw it at somebody and kind of leverage up our position and then manipulate other people to do stuff. We're so good at that, right? We don't even know what that Bible verse is, but every husband in here goes, well, I just know I'm the head of the house. You're supposed to submit to me. What's the rest of the verse? And lay down your life like Christ laid down for the church. I didn't read that part. I know. It's the rest of the verse, though. So quote it all or shut up, right? See, that's what we do. We do that all the time. They're just trying to prove their point. So I can be a good religious person. And Jesus knows what's going on. He knows what we do to each other with the Bible. And by the way, don't ever use the Bible to argue with Jesus. You lose every time. Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts are what? It's a heart issue. Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts are hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. And I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, again, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. And you're not saying you have to get divorced for that, but it's tough. And I know people that have actually worked through it. Sometimes it's just so tough, you're going, I can't get to the other side of it, okay, all right? So maybe you have to give a certificate of divorce, but listen, don't get flippant about this. So follow me on this. Here's what I mean by that. Jesus says that marriage is a permanent spiritual union between a man and a woman and God, three becoming one, and it should not be broken. Followed by this question, yeah? Well, then why is there a Bible verse that allows divorce in certain situations? Jesus, Pastor Jim, whatever, right? Answer, because your hearts are hard. What do you mean my heart's hard? It's stubborn. And listen, I don't want to even listen to it. I don't hear what God says. I don't agree with God. See, the reason that God allows divorce in certain cases of adultery or abuse, and he does, It's because hard-hearted people attack one another, injure one another, and destroy the lives of people who, if they, without a merciful escape or path to safety, you would suffer unimaginable pain, loss, or death. He does it because he's merciful. So please hear this. And again, I've never heard another church say this. So write this down, or you might want to find another church. But Jesus is not saying no divorce ever. If you're a Christian, a good one anyway. It's not in the Bible. It's not true. I've heard it preached all my life. But that would be an abusive, cruel rule that God would never lay on people that he loves. Can you even imagine the character of God going, hey, sorry you made a bad choice and it turned on you. Suck it up. You're stuck with it for the rest of your life till death do you part. Does that seem consistent with the character of God at all? No. No. See, Jesus is saying, or he's reminding us of this. Before we even talk about divorce, he's saying this, hey, marriage is meant to be more than what we have defined it to be. It's not some flippant thing. You want to go to Vegas. You want to jump in and out? It doesn't work, we'll get out of it. And I'll find another one. And then if that doesn't work, I'll get out of it. And I'll find another one. It's more. And the other thing is, Jesus is saying this, listen, when can I get a divorce? It's the wrong question. It's a question you might have to ask sometime, but it's certainly not the first few. It's on the list. So here's a better question. What is the biggest enemy of your marriage? Any marriage. And if you're not married yet, let me tell you, if you do get married someday, what will be the biggest enemy attacking your marriage? And let me tell you what it's not. It's not another pretty woman at the office. It's not pornography. It's not addiction. It's not his parents. It's not. They're an issue, but it's not, all right? Look at your own marriage. What is the biggest thing attacking your marriage? Here's the answer. A hard heart. One or both of you. And if it's one, eventually the other one gets one too. The question is, well, what would cause a person's heart to become hard? Well, you know your story, right? But remember I said this, is that when Jesus says this, it leads to this, and then it leads to this, and this builds on this. See if this sounds familiar. What would lead to somebody's heart getting really hard? I don't know. How about this? Unresolved anger, which leads to frustration, which leads to contempt, which makes me redefine people. I can't divorce my wife, but I can kick that witch to the curb. And he's not a husband. He's a fill in the blank there. And I'll just redefine marriage. There's no way God would expect me to work through this or deal with this, and there's no way I'm going to be. So, okay, unresolved anger and frustration, it leads to redefining everything, which leads to the murder of our marriage. And if you looked at the murder of your marriage, not what happened in the court, but the years leading up to it, doesn't that nail it? Which leads to this, this is what Ben taught last week, looking in the wrong or the bad places to find something good. I'm looking for something good to meet unmet wants and needs and hopes and expectations. But because I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I'm redefining all the rules, I'm looking at all the wrong places. See, Jesus is teaching this, all right? And this is a takeaway I want you to think about for the rest of the week to see if you come back next week, all right? Divorce is not your biggest problem. Divorce is never going to be a person's biggest problem. It's a symptom of another problem, right? What do you mean? Having a hard heart of anger and contempt and uncontrolled, unchecked desires, that's the bigger problem. That's what was upstream and came down here and just landed in this thing called divorce. And it ruined you all, and it ruined your kids, and it ruined so many, many things. I mean, how many, you got to be honest with yourself. And if you're not thinking about your own marriage, think about somebody's that you just walked through this horrible time with them. How many divorces could be traced back to, I was angry, not even at them, but some stuff I brought into the marriage with me, and I never dealt with it, all right? But it came out at them, and then that led to contempt, because he didn't meet my needs, or she didn't do what I told her to do, and all that kind of stuff. And then that led to I've got to look somebody else, shop somebody else, place else to find what I want, and that led to lust, which led to sexual betrayal. You didn't get divorced because of an affair. That's what you pointed your finger at. But the affair was just the result of some stuff way upstream that washed down here, and finally, y'all just stepped out on one another. And now we're going to point at that, but it's all of that. And if we could just address all of that, right? If we could just resolve some of that, and some of that should start to heal, right? And be eliminated. It's just true. Most of the divorces just wouldn't happen if we could deal with everything upstream. See, and divorce, it's not your best solution. It can't be our first one, right? Well, I'm in a really hard marriage, and I don't love her anymore, and I don't want to be with him anymore. Divorce seems to be like my only option. No, here's another one. How about this? A changed heart is the only real solution, and you're not in charge of his or hers. You're in charge of yours. What do you mean a changed heart? I want to live my life with God. That's my only shot. I want God's goodness to replace all my anger and bitterness. I want to live my life in the kingdom. That's my only real solution. So here's what I'm going to call a timeout. We're going to stop right here, all right? But next week, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back in here. We're going to do one thing Jesus tells us to do, right? Take a look at your life. Your current life or the life leading up to this point, and how you've been looking at marriage and relationships, and how you've been preparing for or not preparing for marriage or whatever that is. And if it's working for you, hold on to it. But if not, take a look at what Jesus says might be a better way, rethink how you think about everything, and maybe take hold of something better from this point on. And we talk about this all the time. What happened upstream in our past flows down here and resulted in what is happening right now. But here's an aha moment. We can't change that. We can't change our past. Wouldn't that be awesome, though? Dear Lord, could you just take away my 20s? No. Could you make that not have happened? It happened. We cannot change our past, but we need to pay attention to it and learn from it. And here's an even more important thing. We can't change our past, but thank God we can be forgiven for it. Otherwise, what's the use? See, Jesus did not bring you in here today to pile up a bunch of guilt and shame. He brought you in here today to say you don't have to carry guilt and shame one more minute. You were never designed to carry that. He came to deliver you from it. But he's willing to do that. But you have to take responsibility for your part. If we don't intentionally decide to rethink some really important parts of our life that are so important and the stakes are so high, if we don't say, I need to make some changes in my life that God says is possible, out of the overflow of what he's doing in my life, is that nothing's going to change. And you can't blame God for it. And you can't blame other people for it. So let's try to do something starting from now on, because I will tell you this. How about this? Everything that happens from this moment on is downstream. You're as upstream as you can ever go. That's deep, right? Meaning what? That whatever you decide to do right now will flow down and land on someone. Yourself, your children, your grandkids, your friends, whatever that is, all the people that are connected to you, you're as far upstream as you're able to be. So from this point on, I want to do something better. And I will tell you, speaking for myself, downstream, I want everybody connected to me to experience goodness. I do. It's got to start somewhere. I say, let's start this weekend. Here's 3 questions I want to leave you with. And then the bands, at all of our campuses, bands are going to come and play this song just to let it sink in. And now is your time to find Kleenex. I warned you. Vision, intent, strategy. I teach on this all the time. All right? What vision do you have for your marriage? And if you're 15-year-old and you've checked out going, this isn't even pertinent to me. Not true? Well, I'm not getting married for about 5 minutes. It's going to come fast. What's your vision for what you want your marriage to be like? I don't do very many weddings anymore, but I've lost count of the number of times because I always stand in the back with the groom and his grooms and stuff like that, and we're sitting around just trying to get nerves, and I go, so, you ready to be a husband? And I've lost count of the times the guys looked back at me and went, huh? What? I mean, I'm going to Cancun. No, I'm not talking about that. That's a magic bubble. That's right. And he looks at me going, I probably need to look at that. Can I tell you the worst time to decide when you're going to be what kind of husband you're going to be? At your wedding or after, all right? That needs to take place now, all right? But what if you had a vision for your marriage, men and women, listen, that reflected what Jesus described as providing and protecting one another, intimate, oneness, where you're not arguing about that Bible verse about who's submitting, who's in charge of like that. You are competing with one another, who serves the other one better. Wouldn't you want to get in a marriage where you're going, well, I'm going to outserve her today? Everybody's going, yeah, but we've already put up a white flag on that vision. Why? Because we've been married 30 years. Well, if you want to make it 35, then that leads to intent. You have a great vision for your life. They could write songs about it. It'd be beautiful, right? It doesn't mean anything unless you draw a line in the sand and I'm going for it. From this point on, I'm going to do something, right? We all sit on the couch and go, someday I'm going to lose some weight. Pass the Doritos. And nothing changes. Someday I'm going to have a great marriage. Pass the Doritos. Nothing changes. We got to draw a line in the sand. And that doesn't change anything either until you go, what's my strategy? What am I going to do different from now on? Let me ask you this. If divorce were not an option for you, okay, say it's off the table, and later today, you're going to have a fight with your spouse. It happens, all right? And you're just looking across the kitchen table going, and you're just going at it. And finally one of you goes, what are we going to do about this? What do you mean? Because we have based on our genetics, about 6 decades ahead of us. We got to work some crap out now, or it's going to be really, really bad life. If divorce is off the table, would you do it different? Would you lean into it different? Would you do things that you've never even thought about doing before? How about this? If you're 15, 16 years old right now, you're going to get married someday. Is what you're doing right now setting you up for a good marriage? Because this doesn't change anything. Right? It doesn't. So what are you doing right now? And would you be willing to look at what you're doing right now to say, that doesn't lead to the kind of husband I want to be or the kind of wife I want to be? Are you willing to look at that right now? Right? So I'm going to pray, and the band's going to play this great song. Just let it soak in. And the campus pastors are going to come up, and they're going to close us out. I'm going to ask you this. This is laying really heavy on some people because some of us have attorney's cards in our wallets right now. This isn't hypothetical for some of us, right? So I'm going to ask you, if you have to leave, you have to leave because I'm 6 minutes over. I get it, and I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry. I don't even believe me anymore, do you? When I say it, no, that guy, no. I pray. I don't know what to say. If you can just sit still for a few more minutes, just to let some people have their space with God and with one another in their own hearts, that'd be great. God, in this moment right now, I guess I'm trying to make jokes because I just know how hard this is. I'm trying to break the tension because some of us are feeling anger and shame and guilt and condemnation, and we're feeling trapped and we're feeling hopeless, but that's not the point. The point is to deliver us from all of that and give us something better. And you say better is possible. You say goodness, the kaiosune, is actually possible for people like us in your kingdom. So we ask for forgiveness for our past, but we want a different future. But we need you to show us how to do that and give us the strength to do it. We're open to rethinking everything. That's my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.